This is the plaintiff, Dennis Hutchins. He says the defendant rented from him for 7 years. Now that troublemaking woman owes him rent she stiffed him on, and he's not about to let her get away with it, so he's suing for the $1,111.24 he's owed. This is the defendant, Darlene Stevenson. She says she was constructively evicted because the other tenant in the building smokes, and it seeped into her apartment. The building's smoke-free. The plaintiff did nothing to enforce the rules, and she moved out. End of story. She's accused of trying to live rent-free.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket. The plaintiff says that the defendant was his tenant for 7 years. She's a troublemaker who owes him money. But the defendant says that she was forced to move out because of cigarette smoke, which seeped into her apartment, even though it was a no-smoking building. It's the case of Tobacco Road.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Hutchins, you were the defendant's landlord for how long?
Approximately 7 years.
And what kind of a building is this?
It's an old building built in 1870, three apartments, 2 upstairs, 1 downstairs.
Okay, and she lived in one of the upstairs ones?
She did.
All right. Now, at some point recently, was that the first time you had trouble with her, that she stopped paying rent?
No, she was habitually late or tardy, and we tried to address it. I think that part of her problem was that she didn't have the means. So we reduced the rent from $515 to $475, and things didn't go well even with that. And I suggested to her that maybe I should institute a late charge for the rent, and she didn't like that. She referred to me as being money hungry and turned away, and we didn't discuss it no more. But it didn't change the situation.
Of course you should have a late charge. If you don't have a late charge, then she's going to be late because there's no consequence to a tenant who doesn't have a late charge. So yeah, you should have a late charge. Was she on a month-to-month?
Correct.
Okay. And had she been on a month-to-month for the whole 7 years?
Correct.
Okay. Now, according to you, she was $15 shy of the complete rent payment in September.
Correct.
And then she didn't pay October or November, and she moves out. Did you know she was moving out?
There was no announcement that she was leaving.
Okay. So how did you find out that she had left?
When I drove by the building the given day they were moving out, I think it was the 29th, I seen a moving truck there and her people were carrying her items out.
Okay. And did you say something?
I did not see her and I didn't want to get involved with her people.
Okay. So did she leave you the keys?
She did not.
All right. Ms. Stevenson, what was the reason after 7 years of living there that you wanted to leave or that you decided to leave?
The reason that I decided to leave is I asked Dennis if he will have them to stop smoking, the people downstairs.
The people downstairs were smoking?
Yes. And it's a smoke.
Okay.
It's supposed to be a smoke-free environment. And I'm allergic to smoke, so I asked him, and he said that I have to take it up with them. Well, a couple of months, I took up with them, and they smoked still every day.
Okay. So did you ever tell Mr. Hutchins that you were going to move out?
I did not tell him I was moving out. I was going to tell him I was moving out when I give him back the keys.
That's how you were going to let him know that you were moving out? Because you're supposed to give notice.
Well, I didn't give a notice because I was having problems with the tenants downstairs.
Right, but what does that have to do with your landlord?
Well, for the past 7 years, I've been paying this man cash. He has never, ever once given me a receipt.
Were you $15 short in September?
I might have been $15 short.
Did you pay October?
Yes.
Did you pay November?
No.
Do you have proof that you paid October?
No, because I paid him cash.
I know, but see, I don't pay cash with this hand unless I get a receipt with this hand. Because otherwise, how am I going to prove I paid something? Did you? So
Right.
when you say he wouldn't give receipts, then don't give him the cash. You'll see how fast he writes a receipt. All a receipt is a pen and a paper, and he says, "I hereby acknowledge getting $475 in rent for March." That's all. That's all a receipt is. So if he doesn't have his own receipts, then you have receipts and you have him sign it. But so you would give him cash and not give him receipts. But the problem is, he says you didn't pay. You owe $15, which is a really weird thing to make up for September, and that you didn't pay October and that you didn't pay November. And according to you, you didn't pay November because you knew you were leaving and he could just take the security deposit to cover November. Is that right?
Well,
so your rent is due on the first of the month, right?
Right.
So on the first of the month, you don't pay the rent because you know you're going to leave at the end of the month. That means you could have given him notice, but you didn't give him notice.
Well, because there's been problems with the people downstairs.
I don't know how that doesn't mean, I understand that you don't want to live there. Nobody's going to make you live there. If you have problems with other neighbors, you're free to go. You just got to follow the rules everybody else has to follow. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Hutchins. How long have you been a landlord?
At that building, 35 years.
35 years. Did you ever send the tenant a letter telling her why you were keeping the security deposit and itemizing whatever amounts you needed for either damages and or rent or anything else? Did you ever do that?
She never left a forwarding address.
Did you ever leave a forwarding address, Ms. Stevenson?
A forwarding address? I don't have a forwarding address.
Well, you're living somewhere. There's a couch, a curtain, so you're getting mail somewhere. That's what I mean by a forwarding address.
Well, I moved in with my daughter.
Right. That would be the address that you would give, because here's how it works. He has to write a letter itemizing all of the damages unless you don't give a forwarding address. So he didn't write the letter, and I guess you must know about that requirement, Mr. Hutchins, because your first word was there was no forwarding address. But you know that as a landlord, you're supposed to write the letter, so long as they give you a forwarding address. You know that, right?
I filled out a piece of paper like this right here, and I had it sent to her employment, so she was aware of this breakdown.
So let's talk about that. All right, so according to you, she left the place damaged. How did she leave it damaged?
Dirty, had to replace 4 shades. I had to replace the keys, the locks, because the keys were not left.
Yeah, why didn't you just leave the keys, Miss Stevenson? I don't understand that, because you were moving out. Why didn't you just leave the keys on the counter?
To be honest with you, I did not move myself out. My 3 daughters moved me out because I had to work that day.
Okay.
So I called his house, but there was no answer.
By the way, the security deposit was how much, $515?
Yes, ma'am.
So according to you, the $515 is taken up from damages. So now you can't just say that. You have to itemize what is worth what and prove what is worth what. You have to account for every penny of the security deposit. But let's look at the pictures. You are keeping her security deposit because she left this rack in the bathroom.
With no towel bar back there that she had removed.
Okay. She left a bag on the wall. That's kind of petty.
That's just an example of the things that she left behind that I had to remove.
The devils are in the details. I need to see the actual things she left behind. Your next picture is debris in a closet, and I believe that is a leaf, right?
Could be, yes, I think it is.
Yeah, and you're going to keep a security deposit over that, this little piece of paper. Okay.
Well,
let's see. Dirty sink, that one I'll hand to you. That one is a dirty sink. That should have been cleaned better. Dirty top of stairwell. There's one item on the stairwell, and you're taking a picture of that, and you're keeping her deposit for that. Item lying around. Oh, it's a pen. There's a pen on the floor. And then you had to change the lock.
Yes.
Okay, but why did you change the handset and the whole lock?
No, just the upper part of the lock and the lock on her door upstairs, which she didn't leave the key for.
That is not $515. No, you don't even have to. That is not $515 worth of damages, okay? It's not. Now, Ms. Stevenson, by the way, how many daughters do you have?
3. I have
all
3
three
daughters.
of them help to pack you up and move you out?
Yes.
They're good girls.
Yes.
They're good girls. I have 3 daughters also. I don't know that they would get together and help move me out. I'd hope so. But there's a bag left behind. There's a pen on the floor. Those are not damages. The towel bar, It's probably damages. What does a towel bar cost? $20, okay? But the fact that he has to bend over and pick a leaf and a little piece of paper is absurd. You have to understand, Ms. Stevenson, that you can't look at me and say, yeah, I paid all my rent. You got to prove that you paid the rent. He says that as soon as the smoke started bothering you, you threatened, well, I'm not going to pay the rent because the smoke is bothering me. And that kind of has the ring of truth to it, aside from the fact that you have the burden of proving your defense. And if your defense is, no, I paid it, well, pony up the proof, and you can't. So I am finding in favor of the plaintiff for the $15 in September, $475 in October, and $475 in November. And that is $965.
Can I say something?
Did you ever, can you hold on one second though? Mr. Hutchins, did you ever file an eviction did you ever file like a 3-day notice or anything on her or no?
I did not.
Okay, and she never told you she was leaving. And what were you going to say? Ms. Stevenson, go ahead.
Another reason that I am talking is he let a sex offender move in downstairs, which my daughters would not let my grandkids come over because of it.
How did your daughters even know? Did they run the tenant? How did they find out?
The neighbor next door found out.
But he told that person to leave, right?
He did not. The person got arrested.
For not registering.
For not registering, yes. That he was too close. He got arrested for he was too close to a school, and a park.
All right. How bad was the smoke?
It was real bad. And the neighbor downstairs told me that they did smoke, and they smoked in the bathroom, and they had the fan on as they smoked. Well, that came up into my apartment. So, yeah, it was pretty bad. I was having migraines from the smoke.
The problem is that you're supposed to give notice. That's a problem, Ms. Stevenson. I don't find that there's any damages. He can't keep that $515 for damages. That's kind of silly. But there is a problem, and he didn't even sue for December, but you're supposed to give 30 days notice. And you didn't give the notice, which kind of entitles him to keep the security deposit or the $475 out of the security deposit to pay December, because you're supposed to give notice. The only way you wouldn't have to give notice is if I find that smoke was so bad that you couldn't give notice. You had to leave right away. But you and I both know that's not true, because you already told me how in the beginning of November you already knew you were leaving. So there wasn't a rush to move out for an emergency reason. You just decided you weren't going to give him notice, and you can't do that. So I find he's entitled to the $15 in September. He's entitled to October, November, and December. But there's $515 that he already has for that, and that means he's entitled not to what he's suing for, but to $925 additional dollars from you. For all the rent for October, November, December, and partial September. Not partial, the $15 of September.
I moved out in November.
I know, but you still got to pay November. You got to pay October. You've got to pay December because you didn't give notice that you were going to move out, and you have to pay the $15 in September. So when I add all that together, it's $1,440, from which I will deduct the $515 he already has, and that leaves an amount that is still due and owing to him of $925. Verdict for the plaintiff. Good luck, folks.
So the plaintiff recovers $925. He was suing for $1,124. Ms. Stevenson, you owe him another $925. What do you feel about that? How do you feel about the judge's decision?
I'm very upset about it.
Well, you heard the judge explain you didn't give him notice. You didn't give him notice.
I know.
You had to do that.
But it's hard. It's very hard.
Well, that's a shame. You lived there for a long time, and it ended up like this. That's kind of a shame. But in any event, you lost the case big time. Sorry about that.
I know.
Mr. Hutchins, I guess you're satisfied because you are going to get a good bit of money. How about that?
Well, I appreciate the court hearing my case and the results of the judge's determination of it.
All right, sir. Well, listen, congratulations. You have prevailed in the case. Thank you very much, and I hope it works out better for you with tenants in the future. All right, Harvey, we have a lot of these kind of disputes, rental disputes. What do you think about this one?
Okay, Doug, you know, there are a lot of cases that we've had in the People's Court over smoke. If there is something in the lease that says it's a no-smoking building, the landlord has an obligation to enforce that. Not only to enforce it, to police it. And that means if another tenant is smoking and it really becomes onerous to other tenants, the landlord has a duty to stop that tenant or evict that tenant. And if you're just a third party living in that building and it's unbearable and the landlord isn't doing anything, you would have a claim against the landlord because that's the lease that you signed that says no smoking.
Hey, judges, what do you do to relax? A question from Judith.
Judith, I never have a problem relaxing, okay? Marilyn has to find things to do to relax. I'm naturally relaxed, but I like to play golf, as you know. I play a little bit of golf. I like pinball, and I like to read. So that's like the most relaxing thing for me to just sit down. I like to read books and, you know, whatever I can get my hands on. I'll read a cereal box if there's nothing else to read. So.
Yeah, that's true.
But how about you, Marilyn?
You know, I think relaxing is way overrated.
You would think.
But I'd love to kayak. I love to be on the water.
Right.
During COVID, we bought a pedal paddleboard, so I look ridiculous going on my pedal paddleboard up and down the canal, but I love it.
I look ridiculous right next to you.
And really, probably the one thing I do every day to relax is power walk.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And it always amazes me because I'll get out of bed at 7:30 and I'll come downstairs and she's just gone. There's no evidence except maybe in a half-empty coffee mug, but you know, you've done more by 8 a.m. than I've done all day already, and I'm going to do all day.